The rain came out of nowhere that Tuesday evening. One minute the sky was just gray and moody. The next it was pouring like someone had turned on a giant faucet. He wasn't ready for it. No umbrella, no jacket, just him in a thin sweater trying to shield his laptop bag as he ran down the street looking for somewhere, anywhere, to wait it out. That's when he spotted the bookstore. Funny thing was, he'd walked down this street 100 times before and never really noticed it. The sign was old and wooden, the windows fogged up from all the warmth inside. He pushed through the door and a little bell chimed above his head. The place smelled like coffee and old paper. It was packed. Apparently everyone else had the same idea about escaping the rain. People were crammed into every corner, shaking off their wet coats and laughing about the weather. He stood there for a moment, dripping on the doormat, wondering if he should just make a run for it. But then he saw her. She was sitting at a small table near the window, completely absorbed in whatever book she was reading. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she had this tiny crease between her eyebrows like she was really concentrating. There was an empty chair across from her. It was literally the only seat in the entire place. He hesitated. She looked like she wanted to be alone, but his shoes were already creating a small puddle on the floor, and the barista was giving him a look, so he took a breath and walked over. "Hey, sorry to bother you," he said, trying not to sound as awkward as he felt. "Would you mind if I sat here? Just until the rain stops?" She looked up and for a second their eyes met. Hers were dark brown, warm. She glanced around the crowded cafe, then back at him and gave a small nod. "Sure, go ahead." He sat down carefully, trying not to take up too much space. She went back to her book. He pulled out his laptop but didn't open it. Instead, he just watched the rain streak down the window, forming patterns that kept changing and shifting. Without thinking, he reached into his bag and pulled out his sketchbook. His hand started moving across the page, capturing the way the light broke through the water drops. 20 minutes passed. Neither of them spoke, but it wasn't uncomfortable. It was actually kind of nice sitting there in silence with someone else while the world got washed clean outside. Then it happened. They both reached for the napkin dispenser at the same time. Their hands touched. Just for a second, but it was enough to make them both pull back quickly. "Sorry," they said at the exact same moment, then laughed. She glanced down at his sketchbook, her expression changing. "That's really good," she said, genuinely surprised. "The way you caught the light, that's exactly what it looks like." He felt his face get warm. "Thanks, I don't know, I like drawing things as they are." "Are you an artist?" "Graphic designer, actually, freelance. I mostly do boring corporate stuff, but sometimes I get to do something interesting." She smiled, really smiled this time, and it completely changed her face. "I don't think anything you draw would be boring." They started talking after that. Not about anything deep or important at first, just small things. She told him she was a teacher, 3rd grade, and how her students had been absolutely wild that day because of the weather. He told her about the project he was working on, a logo redesign for a local nonprofit. "I just moved here 6 months ago," he admitted. "Still getting used to the city." "Where from?" "Small town upstate." "You know the kind. Everyone knows everyone." "I needed a change." She nodded like she understood. "I grew up here. Can't imagine living anywhere else, honestly." Even with all the chaos, the conversation flowed easily. She asked about his work, seemed genuinely interested. He asked about teaching, and her whole face lit up when she talked about her kids. There was something about the way she spoke, animated and passionate, that made him want to keep listening. An hour passed, then another. The rain had stopped a while ago, but neither of them mentioned it. The cafe was starting to empty out as people headed home. The barista began wiping down tables and stacking chairs. Finally, she checked her phone and her eyes widened. "Oh no, I didn't realize it was so late. I should probably—" "Yeah, me too," he said, even though he didn't want to leave. They gathered their things slowly. He held the door open for her as they stepped out into the wet evening. The air smelled fresh and clean. The streetlights reflected in the puddles, making everything shimmer. They stood there on the sidewalk, both hesitating. "This was nice," she said. "I mean, sharing the table. Thanks for not being weird about it." He laughed. "Thanks for letting me sit. And for, actually talking to me." There was a pause. One of those moments where you should say something, but you're not sure what. He wanted to ask for her number. The words were right there, ready to come out. But something stopped him. Maybe he was afraid of pushing too hard, too fast. Maybe he was just out of practice. Well, she said, taking a step backward. Maybe I'll see you around. Yeah, he managed. Maybe. She gave him one more smile, then turned and walked away. He watched her go, her figure getting smaller as she moved down the street. When she turned the corner and disappeared, he finally moved. It wasn't until he was halfway home that it hit him. He didn't get her name, didn't get her number, nothing. Just a conversation in a bookstore with a woman whose name he didn't even know. He stopped walking and actually laughed at himself. Out loud. A couple passing by gave him a strange look. Here he was, 32 years old, and he'd just let the best conversation he'd had in months walk away without even getting a name. That night, lying in bed, he kept replaying the evening in his mind, the way she'd looked up from her book, the warmth in her voice when she talked about her students, that smile. He tried to sketch her from memory, but he couldn't quite capture it. The crease between her eyebrows, the way her ponytail had been slightly lopsided, the details were already starting to fade. He told himself it didn't matter. It was just a random encounter. People meet in cafes all the time and never see each other again. That's just how cities work. But deep down in that quiet part of himself he didn't usually listen to, he hoped he was wrong. Meanwhile, across the city, she sat at her kitchen table with a cup of tea growing cold in front of her. She'd picked up her book 3 times but couldn't focus on the words. Her mind kept drifting back to the bookstore. To him. To the easy way they'd talked, like they'd known each other longer than an hour. She thought about his drawings, the careful way his hand had moved across the page, how he'd really listened when she talked, not just waiting for his turn to speak like so many people did. Her roommate came in and raised an eyebrow. You okay? You've been staring at that wall for like 10 minutes. I met someone today, she said, then quickly added, I mean, not like that. We just shared a table at a cafe. Because of the rain, her roommate sat down grinning. And nothing. We talked for a while. Then we both left. That's it. Did you get his number? She shook her head. His name? Another shake. Girl? Her roommate laughed. You're hopeless. Maybe she was. But as she lay in bed that night staring at the ceiling, she found herself smiling. Something about that evening felt different, special somehow, like the universe had nudged them both into that bookstore at exactly the right moment. She'd been so careful for so long. Ever since her last relationship had ended badly, she'd built walls around herself, kept people at a distance. It was easier that way, safer. But tonight, for just a couple of hours, those walls had come down without her even realizing it. Part of her wanted to go back to the bookstore tomorrow, but she knew she wouldn't. What were the chances he'd be there? What were the chances she'd ever see him again in a city of millions? Still, as she drifted off to sleep, she let herself hope. Just a little. 2 weeks passed. He tried not to think about the bookstore, about her. He threw himself into work, spending long hours at his desk designing logos and websites and promotional materials. But every Thursday evening, he found himself walking past that same bookstore, slowing down just a little, glancing through the fogged-up windows. He never went in. That would be too obvious, too desperate. What was he going to do? Sit at the same table every week hoping she'd show up? That was the kind of thing that only worked in movies. But on the 3rd Thursday, he couldn't help himself. He told himself he just wanted to buy a book. That was a normal thing to do. People bought books all the time. It had nothing to do with her. The bell chimed as he pushed open the door. His heart was beating faster than it should have been. He scanned the room quickly, trying to look casual about it. And there she was. Same table, same ponytail, different book. She was stirring a cup of coffee, completely lost in whatever she was reading. For a moment, he considered leaving. This was too much of a coincidence, wasn't it? What if she thought he was following her? What if she didn't even remember him? But then she looked up. Their eyes met across the cafe, and her face broke into the biggest smile he'd ever seen. Rain guy, she called out, laughing. He walked over, trying to play it cool even though his hands were shaking slightly. Book girl, I can't believe you're here. She gestured to the empty chair. Sit, please, he sat. I can't believe you're here either. Do you come here often? Every Thursday after work. It's my decompression time. You? First time back since, he trailed off. Since the rain, she finished. They both smiled. This time felt different. Easier. They picked up where they'd left off 2 weeks ago, but the conversation went deeper. She told him about a difficult student she was trying to help, a kid who reminded her of herself at that age. He told her about losing a major client and how it had shaken his confidence more than he wanted to admit. "You're really talented, though," she said. "I've been thinking about your drawings. Do you ever show your work?" "Not really. I mean, clients see the finished designs, but my personal stuff, I keep that pretty private." "Why?" He thought about it. "Scared, I guess. It's easier to share the commercial work because it's not really me, you know? It's what someone else wanted me to create. But the drawings, the sketches, those are mine." She nodded slowly. "I get that. Teaching is like that too sometimes. You put so much of yourself into it. When it doesn't work out with a student, it feels personal." Thursday became their day. Week after week, without ever officially planning it, they met at the bookstore. Same time, same table. They started texting between visits. Small things at first. A funny meme. A photo of something that reminded them of their conversations. Then longer messages. Real conversations about their days, their worries, their dreams. His friends noticed the change in him. "You've been smiling a lot," his best friend said one night over drinks. "What's going on?" "Nothing, just, I met someone. And we're friends. We hang out sometimes." His friend gave him a look. "Friends, right. That's why you check your phone every 30 seconds. He didn't have a good answer for that. Her friends noticed too. They were having dinner when one of them pointed at her. "You're different lately. Happier." "I'm always happy." "No, you're always fine. There's a difference. This is actual happiness. So spill," she told them about him. About the bookstore and the Thursday meetings and the text that made her laugh in the middle of boring staff meetings. "Have you guys actually gone on a date?" her friend asked. "We hang out." "That's not what I asked." She realized she didn't know how to answer that. What were they doing exactly? It felt like more than friendship, but neither of them had called it anything. They existed in this comfortable in-between space where the pressure was off, but the connection was real. 3 months in, she invited him to her school's art exhibition. Her students had worked hard on their projects and she wanted to share that part of her life with him. He showed up in a button-down shirt looking nervous and sweet, carrying a box of cupcakes for her class. Watching him interact with her students changed something in her. He got down on their level, really looked at their artwork, asked genuine questions. One shy girl who barely spoke in class showed him her painting, and he spent 10 minutes talking to her about color choices and composition. The girl's face glowed. "You're good with kids," she said later as they walked through the school hallways. "They're easier than adults," he admitted. "More honest. If they like something, they tell you. If they don't, they tell you that too. Is that what you want? Kids someday?" The question surprised them both. She hadn't meant to ask something so personal, so forward, but he didn't seem bothered by it. "Yeah," he said simply. "Someday. With the right person." Their eyes met and held. Something unspoken passed between them. The hallway suddenly felt very quiet. He cleared his throat. "Actually, I have something to show you too. There's a small gallery showing some local artists next weekend. I have a few pieces in it. Would you, if you're free, would you want to come?" "I'd love to." The gallery was in a converted warehouse downtown. She arrived wearing a blue dress she'd bought specifically for the occasion, though she'd never admit that out loud. When he saw her walk in, his expression made every penny of that dress worth it. His work was stunning. Not just the clean professional design pieces, but his personal drawings, street scenes, people, the city in rain and sunshine and snow. There was one piece in particular that made her stop. It was the bookstore window, rain-streaked with 2 shadows visible inside. "Is this," she started. "Our first meeting," he finished. "I drew it from memory that night. Couldn't get it out of my head." She didn't know what to say. Her chest felt tight in a way that wasn't entirely comfortable. They got coffee after the showing and walked through the city as the sun set. The conversation was good like always, but there was an undercurrent now. A tension that hadn't been there before. "Can I tell you something?" she said suddenly, stopping in the middle of the sidewalk. "Anything." "I'm scared." The words came out in a rush. "I really like spending time with you. These past few months they've been really good. But I'm scared of what happens if we make this into something official. What if it ruins everything? What if we're better as whatever this is?" He was quiet for a moment. I'm scared too, he admitted. I moved here to start over. After my ex, I told myself I wasn't going to jump into anything. I was going to be smart about it this time, careful. And then I met you and careful went out the window. She laughed, but it came out shaky. So what do we do? I don't know. He took a step closer. But I know I don't want to stop seeing you. I don't want to stop these Thursday bookstore meetings or the random texts or any of it. Me neither. They stood there as people flowed around them on the busy sidewalk. The city moved at its usual frantic pace, but they were still, caught in their own moment. Maybe we don't have to figure it all out tonight, he said. Maybe we just keep doing what we're doing and see where it goes. She nodded, relieved and disappointed at the same time. Part of her wanted him to say more, to push for something definitive. But the bigger part, the part that was still protecting itself, was grateful for the space. They kept walking, and somehow their hands found each other in the growing darkness. Neither of them said anything about it. They just held on. Winter came fast that year. One day it was autumn with its pretty leaves and cool breezes. The next it was bitter cold with wind that cut through layers of clothing. The bookstore became even more crowded as people sought warmth and shelter. He and she had been seeing each other regularly for 4 months now. They'd graduated from just Thursday meetings to weekends, too. Movies and dinners and long walks, even in the cold. But they still hadn't defined what they were. The question hung between them, unasked and unanswered. Then her mother got sick. She called him on a Tuesday evening, her voice tight and small. They found something. In her lungs. They're running more tests, but it doesn't look good. He wanted to drop everything and go to her, but she wouldn't let him. I'm okay. I just wanted you to know. I might be busy for a while. She started canceling plans, missing their Thursday bookstore meetings. Her texts became shorter, less frequent. He tried to give her space while still being supportive, but it was hard to know what she needed when she wouldn't let him in. His own anxiety started creeping back. The old fears that he'd thought he'd dealt with. What if she was pulling away not just because of her mother, but because she'd realized she didn't actually want this? Want him? 2 weeks passed with minimal contact. He threw himself into work, taking on projects he probably should have turned down, working late into the night until his eyes burned and his back ached. Then he saw her. He was meeting a client at a restaurant downtown when he spotted her through the window. She was sitting at the bar, laughing, talking with a man in a suit. They looked comfortable together. Close. His stomach dropped. He told himself it was nothing. She was allowed to have friends, to have a life outside of whatever they had. But the image stuck in his head. Her smile. The way she'd touched the man's arm while making a point. He texted her that night. Just something casual, asking how she was doing. She responded hours later with a brief message about her mother's upcoming surgery and how exhausted she was. He wanted to push, wanted to ask about what he'd seen, about where they stood, about what they were doing, but instead, he typed back something supportive and left it alone. The distance grew. His sister came to visit and immediately noticed something was wrong. She found him one evening surrounded by sketches, all of them variations on the same subject. Her. You want to tell me what's going on? His sister asked, sitting down across from him. He told her everything. The bookstore. The months of building something real. The fear that it was all falling apart. I don't know what to do. Do I push? Do I give her space? Do I just let it end? Do you love her? The question caught him off guard. He started to say something flip, something to deflect, but his sister gave him that look, the one that meant she could see right through him. Yeah, he said quietly. I think I do. Then you fight for it. Not in a pushy way. But you show up, you let her know you're not going anywhere even when it's hard. Meanwhile, across the city, she was having a similar conversation. Her best friend had come over with wine and takeout, refusing to leave until they talked. You're doing it again, her friend said. Pushing someone away because you're scared. I'm not pushing anyone away. My mother is sick. I'm dealing with a lot right now. I know, and it's okay to be dealing with a lot. But what's not okay is shutting out someone who clearly cares about you. When's the last time you actually talked to him? Really talked? She couldn't remember. You're using your mom's illness as an excuse, her friend continued, gentler now. And I get it. It's easier to focus on something concrete, something you can maybe control, than to deal with feelings that scare you. But you're going to lose him if you keep this up. Maybe that would be easier. Easier isn't better. That night she couldn't sleep. She lay in bed thinking about him, about all the small moments they'd shared, the way he really listened when she talked, how he'd spent that whole evening with her students making each one feel special, the drawing he'd made of their first meeting. Her mother's surgery was scheduled for the next week. The prognosis was good, the doctor said, but she couldn't shake the fear. Life felt fragile and uncertain. Everything she'd been avoiding thinking about for months was suddenly right in front of her. What was she so afraid of? She knew the answer. Her father had left when she was 8 years old. Just walked out one day and never came back. No explanation, no goodbye. It had shaped everything about how she approached relationships. She always kept one foot out the door, always held something back. Because if you never fully let someone in, they can't really hurt you when they leave. But was that any way to live? Her mother's surgery went well. The relief was overwhelming. She sat in the hospital room watching her mother sleep and thought about all the things left unsaid. All the chances not taken. All the moments she'd wasted being afraid. She picked up her phone and scrolled to his name, hesitated, put it down. Picked it up again. Finally, she texted him. "Can we talk?" He responded immediately. "When? Now?"
"Can you come over?"
"On my way." 20 minutes later, he was standing outside her apartment door. She opened it and they just looked at each other for a moment. She looked tired, worn down by weeks of stress and worry. He looked uncertain, guarded in a way he'd never been with her before. "Come in," she said. They sat on her couch, not quite touching, the space between them feeling larger than it actually was. "I'm sorry," she said, "for disappearing, for shutting you out. I didn't know how to handle everything. I get it. I know you've been dealing with a lot. That's not an excuse, though. You deserved better than that," he nodded. A long silence stretched between them. "I saw you," he said finally, "a couple weeks ago. At that restaurant downtown. With some guy." Her eyebrows went up. "That was Jamie, my mother's doctor. We were discussing her treatment options." She paused. "Did you think—" "I didn't know what to think." "You weren't talking to me, so you just assumed the worst?" "No, yes, maybe." He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "I was scared, okay? I've been scared this whole time. Of getting too close. Of caring too much. And when you pulled away, all my old fears came rushing back." "What fears?" "That I'm not enough. That eventually everyone leaves." He looked at her directly now. "My ex cheated on me. For months. Made me feel like I was crazy for suspecting something was wrong. So yeah, when you disappeared and I saw you with someone else, I spiraled." She felt like she'd been punched in the gut. "I'm sorry. I didn't know. And I'm sorry I made you feel that way. I should have just asked you. Should have communicated instead of making up stories in my head." They sat with that for a moment. "We're both pretty messed up, huh?" she said with a weak laugh. "Yeah. But maybe that's okay. Maybe everyone's a little messed up and we just have to find someone whose mess fits with ours." She smiled, really smiled, for the first time in weeks. Then it faded. "I need to tell you something. About why I am the way I am." She told him about her father, about the hole his leaving had created, about how she'd spent her whole life ready to bolt before someone could abandon her first. "The thing is," she said, her voice breaking slightly, "what I feel for you scares me more than anything ever has. Because it's real. Because it matters. And if I let you all the way in and you leave, I don't know if I'd recover from that." He moved closer, taking her hand. "I can't promise I won't mess up. I can't promise everything will be perfect. But I can promise I won't leave. Not willingly. Not without fighting for this first." Tears were streaming down her face now. "How do you know?" "How can you be sure?" "Because I love you." The words came out simple and true. "I've loved you since that day in the bookstore, I think. Maybe even from that first moment when you looked up from your book and let me sit down. I love the way you talk about your students. I love how you actually listen when people speak. I love that you're scared, but you're sitting here telling me about it anyway. I love you." She couldn't speak. The words she wanted to say were stuck in her throat, tangled up with years of fear and self-protection. "You don't have to say it back," he said quickly. "I just needed you to know." But she shook her head. I want to say it. I'm just scared, terrified." He squeezed her hand. "That's okay. We can be terrified together." They sat in silence, hands clasped, both crying a little. The weight of the conversation hung in the air, heavy but not uncomfortable. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. How to let someone in completely. Neither do I, but maybe we figure it out together. One day at a time, she nodded. Then, taking a deep breath, she said, I love you too, I do. I've been trying not to because I thought it would keep me safe, but it doesn't work like that, does it? No, it really doesn't. They sat there for a long time, not needing to say anything more. Outside, snow had started to fall, covering the city in quiet white. Inside, something had shifted. The walls they'd both built so carefully had cracks in them now. And maybe that was okay. Maybe that was how the light got in. The apartment was quiet except for the sound of the radiator hissing in the corner. He stood by the window, looking out at the snow that had started falling harder, covering cars and sidewalks and making everything look clean and new. She was still on the couch, her knees pulled up to her chest, watching him. They'd been sitting in heavy silence for several minutes after saying those 3 words to each other for the first time, words that changed everything and nothing all at once. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, she said quietly. He turned from the window. What do you mean? This feeling. This happiness. I keep waiting for it to be taken away. For something to go wrong. She laughed, but it sounded hollow. I know that's messed up. I know I should just enjoy it. But I can't seem to stop waiting for the bad thing to happen. He crossed the room and sat beside her on the couch, but he didn't reach for her yet. When my ex left, I felt relieved at first. Which sounds terrible, but it's true. The relationship had been dying for so long. The lying and the suspicion and the fights. When it finally ended, part of me thought, at least now I know. At least the waiting was over. She looked at him, really looked at him, seeing the pain behind his words. But then the relief turned into something else, he continued. This fear that I'd never be able to trust anyone again. That I'd spend the rest of my life waiting for betrayal. Expecting it. Maybe even causing it because I was so busy looking for it. And now I'm still scared. But I'm more scared of losing this. Of losing you. Because what we have is worth the risk. She felt something crack open inside her chest. All the careful control she'd maintained for so long, all the walls she'd built, they were crumbling. I don't know how to not protect myself. I'm not asking you to stop protecting yourself. I'm just asking you to let me in anyway. To let me stand next to you instead of keeping me at arm's length. Tears started flowing again and she didn't try to stop them. My dad left on a Wednesday. I remember because it was the day I had ballet class and he was supposed to take me. Instead, I came home from school and he was just gone. His clothes, his books, everything. Like he'd never existed. He moved closer but still didn't touch her, sensing she needed space to get this out. My mom tried to explain it, but I was 8. I didn't understand. All I knew was that one day he loved me enough to stay and the next day he didn't. So I learned to leave first. Every relationship, every friendship that got too close, I found a way to sabotage it. Because if I left first, if I kept moving, I'd never have to feel that kind of abandonment again. But you're not moving now, he said softly. No. She looked at him, her eyes red and swollen. Because for the first time in my life, I found something I want to stay for. Someone I want to stay for. And that's absolutely terrifying. He reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away if she wanted to. She didn't. His hand cupped her face, thumb brushing away tears. I need you to know something, she said, her voice shaking. I'm going to mess this up sometimes. I'm going to get scared and pull away and probably hurt you without meaning to. I'm going to fight with you about stupid things because it feels safer than being vulnerable about the real things. I'm going to test you, push you, see if I can make you leave because some broken part of me still expects everyone to leave. Okay. Okay? I'm going to mess up too. I'm going to get jealous over nothing because I still have scars from being lied to. I'm going to need reassurance more than seems reasonable. I'm going to have days where I retreat into work because it's easier than dealing with feelings. We're both going to mess up. That's what people do. But what if we mess up too badly? Then we fix it. We talk about it. We figure it out together. He moved his hand to hold hers. That's what I'm asking for. Not perfection, just honesty. Just us trying. She looked down at their joined hands. I've never tried before. Not really. I've always kept an escape route. Do you want one now? She thought about it. Really thought about it. All those years of running, of protecting herself, of staying safe. Had any of it actually made her happy? Had any of it been worth missing out on moments like this? No, she said finally. I don't want an escape route. I want this. I want you. I want us to build something real, even if it's scary, especially because it's scary. Something shifted in his expression. Relief, joy, fear all mixed together. Yeah? Yeah. They sat there for a moment, the weight of their words settling over them. Then, without really thinking about it, she moved. She closed the space between them, her hands reaching for his face, pulling him toward her, and she kissed him. It wasn't their first kiss. They'd kissed before, careful exploratory kisses that always stopped short of going too deep. But this was different. This kiss held all the fear and hope and love they'd been dancing around for months. It was desperate and gentle and honest all at once. When they pulled apart, both breathless, she kept her hands on his face, her forehead resting against his. "I've been waiting my whole life for this," she whispered. "Not for a person, for the feeling of being ready, of wanting to stay more than I want to run." He wrapped his arms around her, pulling her close. "I'm not going anywhere. Promise?" "Promise." She pulled him closer then, really closer, like she could merge them into one person if she just held tight enough. Like she'd been storing up years of longing for this exact moment. Her arms around his neck, his around her waist, neither willing to let go first. They stayed like that for a long time, maybe hours. Time felt strange and unimportant. Outside, the snow continued to fall, piling up on windowsills and fire escapes. Inside, they held each other like the world might end if they let go. Eventually, they moved to talking. But different talking than before. Real talking. They sat on the floor, backs against the couch, shoulders touching, and shared things they'd never told anyone. Fears and dreams and embarrassing stories and painful memories. He told her about his last day with his ex, how she'd confessed everything so casually, like it didn't matter, like the months of lying had been no big deal. How he'd felt more worthless than angry. She told him about the birthday cards her father had sent for the first few years after he left. Generic cards with generic messages, no return address. How she'd saved them all in a shoebox under her bed until one day when she was 14, she'd burned them all in the backyard. "Do you ever think about finding him?" he asked. "Sometimes. But what would I even say? Hey, remember me? Your daughter you abandoned." She shook her head. "The anger's mostly gone now. What's left is just sadness. Sadness for the little girl who thought she did something wrong, who thought she wasn't enough to make her dad stay. You were always enough. You are enough." She leaned her head on his shoulder.